Now I know we're all still rejoicing the Washington Commanders extending wide receiver Terry McLaurin, as we should, but business continues to move as the Washington Commanders are trying to get their roster down to 53. They just released wide receiver Michael Gallup and a slew of other players. Let's talk about it.
Shout out to Juan Gotti Talking Sports. You know what it is.
Shout out Juan Gotti Talking Sports.
The way that we live is not for everybody.
Nah, that ain't it, y'all.
How do you think the rest of Jaden Daniels' career is going to go? If we're, 6, 7 games into Jaden Daniels' career, and he's already milking injuries? Like,
stop saying my name, you dick riding bastard. I love the way she move it, shake it on me. When she cry for him, and Shawty is the winner. You can tell that Shawty love again now, she's confident.
So Washington is trying to get their roster down to 53, especially since it is going to be official tomorrow. And Washington just got it started with releasing a couple of players, including wide receiver Michael Gallup. And you guys know me, man. That one hits a little bit different because I was a huge Michael Gallup fan this offseason. I was a huge fan of the signing. I thought he was going to come in, and there was a slight chance that he may have turned back the clock and actually contribute to this team's success. And given the fact that this wide receiver room isn't something from top to bottom that is just filled with ultra talent, I definitely thought we were going to be able to use his services. I mean, I know this probably doesn't mean much, but they gave this man a whole one-on-one interview about how does it feel to be back, and after 1 year of retirement. And I'm not talking about just a random interview. I'm talking about an actual one-on-one with Brian Colbert Jr. on the Washington Commanders YouTube channel. So they in fact thought, man, maybe Michael Gallup could mean something, could be something. And I simply just think for Michael Gallup at this point, that clearly just means he might have to hang it up and maybe either go to the XFL if he still wants to play ball, or maybe simply just hang it up, as he came out of retirement last year and he's gone. And when it comes to Washington and this wide receiver room, it doesn't shock me, you know what I mean? Because like I said, this past training camp and preseason, he was a guy that I was excited for, but he didn't do much, right? Especially the 3 times that I was out there at training camp, I was keying in on number 12, and I wanted to see what he was going to do this upcoming year, and he didn't do much in training camp. And then that same thing translated to the preseason game, where nothing really amounted to anything for Michael Gallup. So it definitely sucks that he's gone. Do you lose sleep over Michael Gallup? No, he's definitely clearly far removed from the person that he was years ago with Dallas, and it definitely sucks, but not surprised at all. They also released wide receiver Braylon Sanders. He was a guy that was an interesting name. I believe he was in the XFL a little bit, but obviously a long shot to make the roster to begin with. They also released center Nick Hurst, and this is very, very interesting because they just signed him the same day as George Fant. But a lot of these guys like that are guys that are going to be gone. They were never guys that were going to make this roster, kind of just fillers for the final preseason game. So Nick Hurst being gone isn't surprising, along with Tyree Phillips, defensive tackle, Nora Pollard, I should say, and you also had cornerback Esang Basie. So again, there were some guys that were long shots to make this roster. The big one for me is Michael Gallup, right? Of course, right? I thought, again, he was going to make this roster. Esang Basie, not really. Braylon Sanders, not really. Nolan Pollard, not really. Norrell Pollard. Tyree Phillips, no. So again, it just goes to show you that these are the guys that are off this team, and they're trying to chop down to 53 ahead of tomorrow. And you look at some more guys that's probably going to be on the outside looking in. Tomorrow is going to be a tough day for a lot of guys. We just released 6 players, and we're trying to cut this thing down, like Lawrence Cager, and as I look at this roster, Carl Davis and Sheldon Day, and a lot of these guys are going to be released tomorrow, but some of them will be a practice squad candidate. Now that's interesting to see. Does Michael Gallup be a guy that you bring back on the practice squad? Because you think about it again, he is a guy that had some talent in his past, so he's not just this scrub of a guy. So maybe you try to keep him on the practice squad because you want to have some type of depth that you can call up in case of anything. But he's probably washed, man, at this point. You got Antonio Hamilton Sr., who's not going to make this roster, but probably a prime practice squad candidate. Bobby Hart's not going to make this roster. TJM, Jalen Holmes, and a lot of other guys. I'm just going through the roster trying to figure out some guys that probably won't make this roster, and you'll end up hearing them being cut. But definitely sucks for my guy MG, but for the rest of the crew, doesn't necessarily mean anything major. Now, I do want to talk about tomorrow and what does that mean for Washington as they're trying to get their roster down to 53 guys. It's going to be a lot of interesting, intriguing pieces. That's why I can't wait for you guys to see my 53-man roster tomorrow, because I have some interesting names that may make this roster. I think releasing a guy like Michael Gallup, does that just kind of solidify my point that they're going to keep 5 receivers? Because you look at it like this: no veteran receiver this summer, no young guy outside of Jalen Lane, and I would personally say Ja'Cory Brooks. They're the only guys that really showed something for them to potentially keep an extra 6 guy in the terms of Ja'Cory Brooks. Obviously, Jalen Lane's a lock, right? He's one of the 5, but I'm talking about Ja'Cory Brooks and KJ Osborne and Michael Straction, who is no longer here, right? But like all these guys that competed this summer for that 6 spot, no one really separated themselves. So it definitely has me wondering, are they going to keep 5 receivers? And at this point, I think you should. I honestly do, because there's nobody. And I mean, I'm not interested in Chris Moore. I'm not interested in KJ Osborne, right? I'm not interested in none of these guys. Michael Gallup was the only intriguing piece, and he's gone now too. So that definitely feels like 5 receivers to me. And are you comfortable with that, right? Like, are you comfortable with that? Because think about it. And I know we probably don't do this much, but you go 5 wide. Those are all your receivers. Now, of course, you have different looks of 5 wide. You have maybe 3 wide receivers, 2 tight end sets, or 4 receivers, 1 tight end. There's different ways you can go empty set, but I don't know. It always felt like having that extra cushion of an extra receiver always voted well, especially for when you talk about a special teams guy. And that's the one thing that probably helps Washington decide not to keep 6, because they don't have an extra guy that you can just say, we're keeping him solely because of special teams. You have Jalen Lane, who's most likely going to be your starting punt returner, right? That's pretty much the only guy that you want on special teams. Maybe Luke McCaffrey, but with Terry McLaurin being back in this mix, this wide receiver room is now very, very scary. You know what I mean? And I use that literal, right? Terry back, Noah Brown back, healthy, looking good. Deebo Samuel, Jalen Lane. Also Luke McCaffrey. Are those your 5? Those are your 5. I feel like I'm maybe missing somebody, but no. Terry, Deebo, Noah Brown, Jalen Lane, and Luke McCaffrey. Those are your 5 receivers. It's just hard for me to see them in fact keep 6 receivers, where how no one really separated themselves this offseason or this past summer to tell them that, yeah, they need to keep the roster spot. Maybe Tate Martin comes back on the practice squad. I know for sure they're going to bring back Ja'Cory Brooks on the practice squad. That's without a doubt. So I'm not really too worried about those fellas. I would love for Ja'Cory Brooks to make this roster, though. And it's solely because I kind of feel like it evens it out, right? You have Deebo, Terry, and Noah Brown, who are your vet to the room. Then you got Luke McCaffrey, Jalen Lane, and Ja'Cory Brooks as your young guys of the room. I think they're, again, going to ultimately keep 5, but I low-key want them to keep 6. There's nobody that makes me feel comfortable about 6, I'll say, to be honest with you, but it's just like that extra cushion, all could bode well for you, right? Just in case something may happen. And I know you're like, Juan, well, you can stick these guys on the practice squad, which I guess you're right, because, again, there's nobody that other teams are clamoring for to take off your roster, so they can go through waivers and probably be perfectly fine. Maybe Ja'Cory Brooks does get snagged, but I highly doubt that. But man, this is just a quick little video. I didn't want to hold you guys up. It was really about Michael Gallup. All the other guys, Esong Basie and Norrell Pollard, and also Braylon Sanders and Tyree, feel like we already knew those guys wasn't making it. But there goes my guy, Michael Gallup, which sucks, but I wish him nothing but the best. But what says you down below in the comment section? As always, being boy Juan Gotti, make sure you like, comment, subscribe to the channel. On the road to 11,000 subscribers, and don't lose sight that Terry McLaurin is a commander for a long-term contract extension. Peace.
Never gave a fuck. Ballin' like I'm Deshaun, throw the bomb, G. That's IG, my jersey never seen a line.